This is the mind shift, not a lesson, but a remembering. Within these ancient tales, you'll find quiet truths that reshape your world, not through force, but through breath, stillness, and surrender. This is not a teaching. It is a return to what your soul has always known. The Mind Shift. Introduction. This is not merely a book, it is a whisper from beyond the veil, a flicker of ancient fire passed from soul to soul. It does not seek to teach, but to awaken what has long slept within you. The stories you are about to hear rise from lands both remembered and imagined, where desert winds carry the voices of sages, where mountains echo the silence that teaches, and where bakers, shepherds, and dancers carry truths in the folds of their everyday lives. Each tale is more than a tale. It is a key, each figure a light in human form. You will find no commandments etched in stone here, no thunderous proclamations. What you will find are echoes, soft threads of knowing, drifting through time to remind you of what you have always carried. These truths do not arrive with force, but like the breath that shapes molten glass, or the stillness before sunrise. The glass blower breathes and transformation begins. The shepherd listens and the path unfolds. The merchant surrenders and is made strong. The blacksmith is taught by fire itself. None of them learned. They remembered. These stories are not for study, they are for remembering, not with the mind that analyzes, but with the soul that listens in silence. Within each story lies a hidden ember, a breath, a pause, a turning inward. They are not ornaments, they are the flame. So listen not with haste, but with reverence. Let these parables speak to you as the old ones once did, with the hush of trust and the quiet certainty that you are ready now, ready to remember who you are beneath the noise. For in the end, this is not a journey of becoming, it is a return, and the secret, as you will see, was never far, only waiting. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Part 1, The Art of Inner Transformation. Chapter 1, The Glassblower's Secret. In the ancient city of Damascus, where the desert winds carried whispers of forgotten wisdom, there lived a master glassblower named Michael Rodriguez. His workshop was a sanctuary of dancing flames and molten possibilities where ordinary sand transformed into vessels of extraordinary beauty. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber, a young apprentice watched in frustration as another vessel shattered in his hands. "I don't understand," he lamented. "I'm using all my strength, yet the glass refuses to bend to my will." Michael paused his work, a knowing smile playing across his weathered face. "Come," he said, beckoning the apprentice closer. "Watch not my hands, but my breath." The master lifted his blowpipe, and with each gentle exhale, the molten glass began to dance. It expanded and contracted like a living thing, responding not to force but to the rhythm of his breathing. "The secret," Michael explained, "is not in commanding the glass, but in becoming one with its nature. The harder you try to dominate it, the more it resists." As if to demonstrate, he closed his eyes and took 3 slow breaths. With each exhale, the glass transformed, flowing like water in his hands. "The glass," he said, "is like our own consciousness. It cannot be forced into enlightenment, only gently guided into awakening. You see, dear reader, your mind is much like that molten glass. When you attempt to force change through sheer will, you create resistance. But when you learn to work with the natural flow of consciousness, transformation becomes effortless. The breath is your blowpipe, the gentle tool that shapes the formless into form. Just as Michael couldn't force the glass to become beautiful, you cannot force your mind into enlightenment. Instead, you must learn the art of gentle awareness. Practice the glassblower's breath. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably, allowing your spine to rise like a column of light. Now imagine your consciousness as molten glass, warm and flowing. Begin to breathe slowly and deeply. With each inhale, feel your awareness expand like heated glass. With each exhale, allow your consciousness to gently take new form. Don't force or strain. Simply observe the natural rhythm of transformation. Continue this practice for 7 breaths, allowing each cycle to be different from the last. Like the master glassblower, you're not trying to control the process, but rather to understand and work with it. Remember, just as the most beautiful glass vessels emerge from the gentlest touch, your greatest transformations will come not from forcing change, but from learning to dance with the natural flow of consciousness. And so it was that Michael Rodriguez's workshop became known not just for its beautiful glass, but for the wisdom it held about the nature of transformation itself. For in every piece he created, there was a reminder that the most powerful changes come not from the strength of our will, but from the depth of our understanding. Chapter 2: The Merchant's Paradox. In the bustling port city of ancient Tyre, where trading ships carried precious cargo from distant shores, there lived a merchant named Jessica Chen. Her warehouses overflowed with silk and spices, yet she found herself plagued by an endless cycle of worry and control. Each morning she would pace the docks, scrutinizing every detail of her operation, attempting to bend circumstances to her will. Her ledgers were immaculate, her plans precise, but still, the tides of commerce seemed to mock her efforts at mastery. One stormy evening, as she frantically tried to salvage a shipment of rare indigo dye from unexpected rain, an old salt trader named Joseph watched her with amusement. "You remind me of a sailor who tries to control the wind," he observed, "instead of learning to adjust his sails." Jessica paused, her hands stained blue from the frantic work. "But how else can I ensure success?" she asked, gesturing at the chaos around her. The old trader reached into his pocket and withdrew 2 shells. "Watch," he said, placing them in a puddle of rainwater. The first shell he tried to hold steady against the ripples, and it quickly filled and sank. And the second he simply allowed to float, rising and falling with each wave. "Your power," he explained, "lies not in controlling the ocean of circumstances, but in mastering your response to its movements. See how the floating shell remains above water, while the one I tried to hold steady is sunk." That night, Jessica pondered the paradox. The more she tried to control outcomes, the more they eluded her. But when she focused instead on controlling her responses, previously impossible situations resolved themselves with surprising ease. Dear reader, you too may be attempting to control the uncontrollable, but true power lies not in dominating external circumstances, but in mastering your internal response to them. Like Jessica, you must learn to float rather than fight. Practice the merchant's response. Each morning, seat yourself in a place of quiet contemplation. Place before you 2 objects, one representing a situation you wish to control, and one representing your response to it. Close your eyes and imagine yourself releasing your grip on the first object while strengthening your hold on the second. Feel the shift in energy as you transfer your focus from external control to internal mastery. For the next 7 days, when faced with challenging circumstances, pause and ask yourself, am I trying to control the waves, or am I learning to float? Remember, the merchant who tries to control the market will be broken by it, but the one who masters their response to market movements becomes truly wealthy. And so it was that Jessica Chen's greatest profit came not from controlling her empire, but from learning to navigate it with wisdom. Her warehouses remained full, but more importantly, her mind remained calm amidst the storms of commerce. Chapter 3. The Shepherd's Compass. High in the ancient mountains of Cappadocia, where rocky spires pierced the clouds like nature's temples, lived a young shepherd named David Kim. Though skilled at tending his flock, he relied heavily on familiar landmarks and the stars to guide his way through the treacherous peaks. One autumn evening, as darkness approached earlier than expected, an impossible storm descended upon the mountains. Lightning fractured the sky, while thick fog erased every known marker from view. David's heart raced as he realized he could no longer see the stone pillars and ancient caves that had always shown him the way home. Huddled beneath an outcropping with his frightened sheep, he remembered the words of his grandmother, "When the outer world becomes chaos, the inner world becomes your compass." With trembling hands, he did as she had once taught him. He closed his eyes, despite every instinct screaming to keep them open. He quieted his breathing, despite the howling wind demanding his attention. And in that stillness, something extraordinary happened. He began to sense what his eyes could never see, the subtle slope of the earth beneath his feet, the way the wind carried the scent of the valley's cypress trees, the peculiar resonance of the storm echoing off distant cliff walls. His body knew the way home, even if his mind had forgotten. Step by step, guided by nothing but this inner knowing, David led his flock through the blinding storm. When dawn finally broke, he found himself exactly where he needed to be, though he had taken a path he'd never traveled before. Dear reader, you too possess this internal navigation system, though perhaps you've forgotten how to use it. Like David, you may have become overly reliant on external markers to guide your journey. But the deepest wisdom lies in that silent space where knowing transcends seeing. Practice. The shepherd's silence. Find a quiet place and sit with your eyes closed. Place your hands palms down on your legs, connecting you to the earth like a shepherd's staff. For the next 7 breaths, allow each of your senses to quiet one by one. Let your eyes rest in darkness. Let external sounds fade to background. Feel the weight of your body dissolve. In this space of pure listening, ask your question or seek your direction. Don't strain for an answer. Like David in the storm, simply allow your inner compass to align naturally. Remember, the loudest voice will rarely point true north. It is in perfect silence that we hear the whispers of our deepest guidance. And so it was that David Kim became known not just as a shepherd of sheep, but as one who could find his way through any storm. For he had discovered that while the outer world may become chaos, the inner compass never loses its way. Chapter 4. The Scribe's Burden. In the gilded halls of ancient Persepolis, where history was written in strokes of ink and gold, there worked a court scribe named Amanda Thompson. Her shoulders bent beneath the weight of recording every royal decree, diplomatic treaty, and imperial proclamation that passed through the palace's marble corridors. Each night Amanda would return to her chambers, her fingers stained with ink and her spirit heavy with the responsibility of preserving the Empire's memory. The scrolls seemed to multiply endlessly, and she felt crushed beneath their importance. One evening, as she struggled under a particularly large stack of parchments, she encountered the elderly palace janitor who was sweeping the moonlit halls. His name was Raymond Hayes, though most knew him simply as the keeper of corridors. "Quite a load you carry," he observed, leaning on his broom with unexpected grace. "These scrolls contain the Empire's most vital records," Amanda sighed. "Their weight is crushing me." Raymond smiled and reached for his water bucket. "Watch," he said. He lifted the full bucket with one hand, his arm trembling with effort. Then he shifted his stance and redistributed the weight, now holding it with apparent ease. "The bucket didn't become lighter," he explained, "but by changing how I carry it, it ceased to be a burden." He demonstrated again, showing how the same weight could feel heavy or light, depending on how one chose to bear it. "Your scrolls," he continued, "are like my bucket. Their importance doesn't change, but how you carry that importance. That's where wisdom lies." Dear reader, you too may be bearing weights that seem unbearable, but perhaps like Amanda, what needs transformation is not the load itself, but your relationship to it. Practice the scribe's shift. Find a quiet moment and sit with your back straight, like a scribe at her desk. Place your hands, palms up on your knees, as if holding your daily responsibilities. Close your eyes and imagine each of your burdens as a scroll of ancient wisdom. Don't try to make them lighter. Instead, feel how they might be carried differently. Notice how shifting your perspective changes their weight. For 7 breaths, practice receiving your responsibilities rather than resisting them. Feel how acceptance transforms burden into purpose. Remember, the heaviest scroll becomes light when we understand its true nature. It is not what we carry, but how we carry it that determines its weight. And so it was that Amanda Thompson learned to dance with her duties rather than be crushed by them. The scrolls remained as numerous as ever, but she moved among them with new lightness, for she had discovered that even the weightiest responsibilities could be transformed through the wisdom of how they were carried. In the years that followed, those who visited the palace would remark on the curious sight of a scribe who moved through mountains of scrolls with the grace of a dancer, having learned the secret of carrying weight without being weighed down. Chapter 5. The Blacksmith's Fire. In the shadow of Mount Olympus, where volcanic fires fed the forges of ancient Greece, worked a blacksmith named Brandon Sullivan. His hammer strikes echoed through the valley like thunder, and his temper burned as hot as his forge. Brandon was known for both his masterful weaponry and his fierce impatience. When the metal didn't yield quickly enough, he would strike harder and faster, often ruining his work in his haste to see it finished. His young apprentice, a quiet girl named Tiffany Reed, watched his struggles with knowing eyes. Though only 14 summers old, she had inherited her grandmother's gift for reading the language of fire. One morning, as Brandon struggled with a particularly stubborn sword, Tiffany stepped forward. "Master," she said softly, "the fire is trying to teach you something." Brandon paused mid-strike, sweat glistening on his brow. "Fire teaches nothing," he growled. "It only burns." Tiffany picked up a thin rod of iron and held it in the flames. "Watch," she whispered. The metal began to glow, first black, then red, then orange, and finally a brilliant white. "The fire speaks in colors," she explained. "Each shade is a word, each glow a sentence. When we listen, the metal tells us exactly when to strike. She demonstrated, her small hammer falling not with force but with perfect timing. The metal moved like water under her touch, transforming with an ease that seemed almost magical. Dear reader, you too may be forcing your transformations, striking too hard or too soon at the challenges before you. But like Brandon, you must learn that power lies not in the strength of the blow, but in the wisdom of its timing. Practice the blacksmith's patience. Sit quietly and place your hands on your knees, palms facing up like a sword waiting to be forged. Close your eyes and breathe deeply, imagining a sacred fire burning within your chest. For 7 breaths, observe how this inner flame rises and falls. Notice its colors, its rhythms, its silent messages about when to act and when to wait. With each breath, practice recognizing the perfect moment, that space between preparation and action where transformation becomes effortless. Remember, the master blacksmith knows that metal, like life itself, has its own timing. True power comes not from forcing change, but from learning to dance with the flames of transformation. And so it was that Brandon Sullivan learned to temper his impatience in the fires of wisdom. His forge became a sacred space where timing replaced force, and his greatest masterpieces emerged not from the strength of his arm, but from the patience of his heart. Those who passed by his forge in later years would often pause, mesmerized by the sight of a blacksmith and his apprentice working in perfect harmony with the flames, their hammer strikes falling like raindrops in a rhythm as old as fire itself. Chapter 6: The Dancer's Grace. In the sacred temple city of Angkor, where stone dancers frozen in eternal poses lined every wall, lived a young temple dancer named Stephanie Martinez. Though her heart burned with devotion, her movements were awkward and disjointed, earning her the whispered title, the Stumbling Lotus. Each morning, Stephanie practiced in the temple's outer courtyard, trying desperately to mirror the fluid grace of the other dancers. But the more she focused on perfecting each gesture, the more rigid her movements became. One dawn, as frustration brought tears to her eyes, she noticed an ancient gardener tending to a patch of bamboo. His name was Kenneth Phillips, and though his back was bent with age, he moved with an otherworldly grace as he worked. "How do you move so beautifully?" Stephanie asked, "when all you're doing is gardening?" Kenneth smiled, continuing his flowing movements. "I don't move at all," he replied. "I simply allow myself to be moved." Seeing her confusion, he pointed to the bamboo swaying in the morning breeze. "Watch closely. The bamboo doesn't try to dance. It surrenders to the rhythm that already exists. The wind, the earth, the dawn, they create a symphony. The bamboo simply joins the song." He guided Stephanie to stand among the bamboo stems. "Close your eyes," he instructed. "Feel the rhythm that flows through everything. Don't create the movement. Let the movement create you." Dear reader, like Stephanie, you may be forcing your way through life's dance, trying to control every step. But grace comes not from imposing rhythm, but from discovering the rhythm that already exists within all things. Practice the temple dancer's flow. Find a quiet space and stand with your feet shoulder-width apart, like a dancer preparing to begin. Close your eyes and imagine yourself as bamboo in the morning breeze. For 7 breaths, allow your body to sway naturally, following whatever subtle movement arises. Don't direct, simply observe and allow. Feel the rhythm that flows through all things, your heartbeat, your breath, the pulse of life itself. Let this rhythm move through you without resistance. Remember, the greatest dancers don't dance, they become the dance itself. When we surrender to life's natural rhythm, grace becomes effortless. And so it was that Stephanie Martinez became known not as the stumbling lotus, but as she who dances with the dawn. Those who watched her perform would swear they could see bamboo swaying in her movements, and the ancient rhythm of the universe flowing through her dance. And in time, other dancers came to learn her secret, but what they found was not a technique to be mastered, but a truth to be remembered, that grace comes not from controlling movement, but from joining the eternal dance that moves through all things. Chapter 7: The Farmer's Patience. In the fertile valleys of ancient Mesopotamia, where the first seeds of civilization took root, lived a farmer named Timothy Anderson. Unlike the patient agriculturalists around him, Timothy was known for his restless nature and constant checking of his crops, as if he could force them to grow faster through sheer will. When the seasonal rains came late one year, Timothy planted his most precious seeds, rare grains passed down through generations. But as days turned to weeks, with no sprouts breaking the soil's surface, his anxiety grew like weeds in an untended field. Each morning he would dig up seeds to check their progress, unknowingly disturbing their delicate process of becoming. Each evening he would pace the barren fields, his worry casting long shadows in the setting sun. One night, as he sat dejectedly by his empty fields, he encountered a mysterious fig merchant named Patricia Hayes, who traveled the Silk Road with trees that somehow bore fruit in any season. "Your seeds are not dead," she observed, setting down her basket of perfectly ripe figs. "They are learning how to become what they must be." "But I see nothing growing," Timothy protested. Patricia pulled a fig from her basket and split it open. "See these tiny seeds?" she asked. "Each one contains an invisible map of becoming. Before the fig tree reaches toward the sun, it must first grow downward, establishing roots you cannot see. Your desire to witness growth is actually preventing it." She handed him the fig. "The sweetest fruits come from the patience to allow what is unseen to develop in its own time. Your crops aren't failing. They're teaching you to trust the darkness." Dear reader, like Timothy, you may be anxiously uprooting your dreams to check their progress. But the most profound transformations begin in darkness, in those quiet spaces where faith must replace sight. Practice. The seed secret. Find a quiet moment and sit with your back straight, like a seed preparing to sprout. Place your hands palms down on your thighs, connecting to the earth's wisdom. For 7 breaths, imagine yourself as a seed in rich soil. Feel the darkness around you, not as an absence, but as a presence, a nurturing space where possibility takes root. With each breath, practice trusting what you cannot yet see. Allow your dreams their season of invisible growth. Remember, the farmer who trusts the wisdom of seeds never fears the darkness of becoming. And so it was that Timothy Anderson learned to farm with faith rather than fear. His fields eventually flourished, not because he mastered growth, but because he mastered waiting. Those who passed his lands in later seasons would marvel at crops that seemed to dance with their own inner timing, nurtured by a farmer who had learned to trust the invisible rhythms of transformation. In time, his harvest became known as the most abundant in the valley, not because he worked harder than others, but because he had discovered that patience was the secret fertilizer that made all things grow in their perfect season. Chapter 8: The Weaver's Pattern. In the misty highlands of ancient Peru, where the clouds wove patterns across mountain peaks, lived a master weaver named Sarah Phillips. While other weavers created simple blankets and ponchos, Sarah was known for tapestries of such intricate complexity that viewers would weep at their beauty, seeing in them the very patterns of creation itself. Yet Sarah's most profound wisdom came not from her masterpieces, but from the way she taught her youngest student, a boy who struggled with tangled threads and chaos. "I cannot make sense of it all," he complained one morning, his loom a maze of knotted confusion. "There are too many threads, too many possibilities." Sarah smiled and led him outside, where a spider had built its web between two posts. Morning dew revealed the intricate geometry of its design. "Watch carefully," she said, gently blowing on the web. As it moved, sunlight caught each droplet, transforming the simple structure into a dance of light and shadow. The spider doesn't see complexity. It follows one simple rule. Each thread must connect to what came before. From this single principle, infinite patterns emerge. She returned to her loom and showed him how her seemingly complex designs followed the same truth. All patterns in life, no matter how intricate, arise from simple connections. When you understand this, chaos becomes impossible. Dear reader, like Sarah's student, you may feel overwhelmed by life's complexity. But beneath every confusion lies a simple pattern waiting to be recognized. The universe itself is a grand tapestry woven from one fundamental truth: everything connects. Practice the weaver's eye. Sit quietly and raise your hands before you as if holding invisible threads. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. For 7 breaths, imagine each inhale as a golden thread connecting to each exhale. Feel how this simple pattern creates a tapestry of awareness. Now open your eyes and observe your surroundings. Notice how everything connects to everything else, forming patterns within patterns. Remember, the master weaver knows that complexity is an illusion. All of life's mysteries can be understood by following the thread of connection. And so it was that Sarah Phillips taught not just the art of weaving, but the art of seeing the hidden patterns that connect all things. Those who studied her tapestries closely would discover that each one revealed this truth: that in the grand design of existence, there are no separate threads. Her most beautiful works now hang in temples high in the Andes, where they continue to teach that wisdom comes not from mastering complexity, but from recognizing the simple pattern that weaves all things together in the eternal dance of connection. Chapter 9, The Hunter's Stillness. In the dense forests of ancient Siberia, where shadows dance between towering pines, lived a young hunter named Jason Torres. Despite his keen eyes and swift feet, Jason was known throughout his village for missing even the easiest shots. His arrows would fly wild, startling birds into flight and sending deer bounding into the mist. "You think too much about the target," the other hunters would say. But Jason only tried harder, gripping his bow until his knuckles turned white, his frustration growing with each failed hunt. One bitter winter morning, as hunger gnawed at the village's stores, Jason encountered an unusual sight: a one-eyed hunter named Rachel Brooks, who moved through the forest with such fluid grace that she seemed part of the wilderness itself. Though she carried no bow, her hunting bag was always full. "How do you catch anything without a weapon?" Jason asked, watching her gather rabbits from simple snares. Rachel touched a finger to her temple. "The real weapon is here, she said, "not in the bow or the trap, but in the space between thoughts." Seeing his confusion, she led him to a frozen pond. "Look at your reflection," she instructed. "Now try to grab it." When Jason reached for his image, the water rippled and distorted. "You cannot grasp what you chase," Rachel explained. "But when you become still—" She waited until the water settled, and their reflections appeared crystal clear. "Success is like this reflection," she continued. "The harder you grasp, the more it eludes you. True accuracy comes not from tension, but from a special kind of relaxed focus, like a mountain lake at dawn." Dear reader, like Jason, you may be straining to hit your target, not realizing that your very effort creates the disturbance that prevents success. True mastery comes not from trying harder, but from finding the still point where action becomes effortless. Practice the hunter's focus. Find a quiet space and sit with your spine straight, like an archer preparing to draw. Rest your hands gently on your knees. For 7 breaths, imagine yourself as a mountain lake at dawn. With each exhale, let your mind become more still, more clear. Notice how targets become clearer when you stop trying to see them, how success becomes inevitable when you stop forcing it. Remember, the master hunter knows that stillness is the ultimate accuracy. And so it was that Jason Torres became known not for his desperate efforts, but for his supernatural stillness. Those who watched him hunt would swear his arrows flew not from his bow, but from the silent space between heartbeats. In time, other hunters came seeking his secret, but what they found was not a technique to master, but a truth to remember, that in perfect stillness, success is not achieved. It is allowed. Chapter 10, The Baker's Timing. In the sun-baked hills of ancient Tuscany, where the aroma of fresh bread drifted through winding cobblestone streets, lived a village baker named Michelle Campbell. While other bakers produced reliable loaves, Michelle was known for her restless perfectionism, constantly opening her clay oven to check each batch, never quite trusting the ancient rhythms of bread making. Her obsession with control led to loaves that were dense and heavy. Though she worked harder than any baker in the region, the more she watched and worried, the more her bread refused to rise to its full potential. One sweltering summer day, as Michelle fretted over another disappointing batch, an old winemaker named Kenneth Hayes appeared at her door. His vintages were legendary throughout the land, though no one ever saw him hovering over his barrels or testing his grapes before their time. "Ah," he said, inhaling the scent of her latest attempt, "you suffer from the watcher's curse." "The what?" Michelle asked, pulling another dense loaf from her oven. Kenneth produced 2 clay cups and his finest wine. "Watch," he instructed, filling both. He began swirling one cup continuously while leaving the other undisturbed. The wine that is constantly agitated never reveals its true character, but the one we leave in peace. He lifted the untouched cup, releasing a bouquet of perfect complexity. "Bread, like wine, has its own wisdom," he continued. "It knows how to transform itself if we honor its timing. Every time you open the oven, you interrupt the sacred dance between flour and fire, air and time." Dear reader, like Michelle, you may be disrupting your own creation through constant checking and worry. True mastery comes not from controlling every moment, but from knowing when to step back and trust the process. Practice the baker's trust. Find a quiet moment and sit with your palms facing upward, like a baker surrendering to the wisdom of time. Breathe deeply as bread dough rises in perfect silence. For 7 breaths, practice the art of productive detachment. With each exhale, release the urge to check, control, or verify. Remember, the master baker knows that perfection rises not through force, but through trust in divine timing. And so it was that Michelle Campbell learned to work with time rather than against it. Those who tasted her bread would swear it had been blessed by angels, though her only secret was knowing when to let go and let rise. Her bakery became known as a place where miracles emerged from the oven daily, not because she mastered bread, but because she mastered the art of stepping back and allowing perfection to unfold in its own perfect season. Part 2. The Wisdom of Hidden Patterns. Chapter 11. The Astronomer's Vision. In the windswept deserts of ancient Babylonia, where the night sky stretched like an infinite tapestry of light, lived an astronomer named Matthew Walker. While other stargazers charted predictable paths of planets, Matthew was obsessed with finding patterns in the seemingly random scatter of shooting stars. Night after night, he would climb his tower, recording every fleeting flash of light, convinced that chaos held a hidden order. But the more he tried to force the stars into familiar shapes, the more the patterns eluded him. One moonless night, as Matthew struggled with his charts, an elderly temple keeper named Patricia Hayes approached his tower. Though nearly blind, she was known for her uncanny ability to predict events before they unfolded. "You search the sky like a man counting grains of sand," she observed, her clouded eyes turned skyward. "But have you ever watched how a falcon sees?" Leading him to a high window, she pointed to a hummingbird circling above. "The falcon doesn't see each individual mouse in the field below. It sees the movement of life itself, the ripple in the pattern that reveals where prey will be, not where it is." She took his charts and scattered them in the wind. "Stop recording where stars have fallen. Watch instead for the flow that shows where they will appear." That night, Matthew stopped trying to capture each meteor's path and began watching the spaces between them. Suddenly, he saw it, not the stars themselves, but the grand dance they were part of. In that moment, he understood that patterns weren't things to be tracked, but movements to be felt. Dear reader, like Matthew, you may be searching for order in life's chaos by trying to capture and control each moment. True vision comes not from recording what has happened, but from sensing the flowing pattern that reveals what's emerging. Practice the astronomer's eye. Find a quiet place beneath the open sky, whether day or night. Sit with your gaze relaxed, as if watching distant horizons. For 7 breaths, let your vision soften. Instead of focusing on individual objects, allow your awareness to expand until you sense the space between things. Notice how patterns emerge naturally when you stop trying to force them into familiar shapes. Remember, the master astronomer knows that chaos is simply order, waiting to be recognized. And so it was that Matthew Walker became renowned, not for his star charts, but for his ability to recognize opportunities hidden in apparent randomness. Those who studied with him learned that wisdom comes not from controlling the universe, but from aligning with its eternal dance. His tower still stands in the desert, where seekers come not to study the stars, but to learn the art of seeing patterns in life's infinite possibilities. Chapter 12. The Musician's Silence. In the misty mountains of ancient Tibet, where prayer flags whispered secrets to the wind, lived a gifted musician named Ashley Rodriguez. Her melodies on the bamboo flute drew tears from even the most stoic monks, yet she felt perpetually unsatisfied, always striving to fill every moment with more notes, more complexity, more sound. Despite her technical mastery, the temple elders would often say her music lacked something essential, though none could explain exactly what was missing. Ashley played faster, added more ornaments, practiced longer hours, but the emptiness remained. One morning, while practicing by a mountain stream, she encountered an aging temple sweeper named Robert Phillips, who moved with such quietness that even the birds continued their songs as he passed. Though he never spoke, his presence seemed to carry its own kind of music. Seeing Ashley's frustrated attempts to perfect a difficult passage, Robert took her flute and played a single, pure note. Then he waited. The note's echo danced off the canyon walls, transforming through space and time until it returned as something entirely new. "But I wasn't playing anything during that time," Ashley protested when he returned her flute. Robert smiled and pointed to the spaces between the prayer flags where the wind created invisible songs. He gestured to the pause between the stream's bubbling notes, to the silence between bird calls. At that moment, Ashley understood. She had been so focused on the notes themselves that she had missed the sacred spaces that gave them meaning. Like trying to read a scroll with no spaces between words, her music had become an unbroken stream of sound with no room to breathe. Dear reader, like Ashley, you may be trying to fill every moment with action, not realizing that power often lies in the spaces between. True mastery comes not from constant doing, but from knowing when to allow silence to speak. Practice the musician's pause. Find a quiet space and sit like a flute awaiting breath. Let your hands rest gently in your lap. For 7 breaths, focus not on the sound of your breathing, but on the spaces between breaths. Notice how these gaps are not empty, but full of potential. Remember, the master musician knows that music is born not from notes alone, but from the silence that gives them meaning. And so it was that Ashley Rodriguez became known not for the complexity of her melodies, but for the profound simplicity of her music. Those who heard her play would swear they could hear the voice of the mountain itself in the spaces between her notes. Her flute still rests in the temple, reminding all who see it that the greatest power often lies not in what we do, but in knowing when to do nothing at all. Chapter 13, The Architect's Foundation. In the sun-bleached hills of ancient Greece, where marble columns reached toward azure skies, lived an ambitious young architect named Joshua Martinez. While other builders created solid structures, Joshua dreamed of towers that would pierce the clouds, each one taller and grander than the last. But despite his brilliant designs, Joshua's buildings had a troubling tendency to collapse. No matter how carefully he planned the upper floors, his towers would inevitably crack and crumble, leaving him surrounded by ruins and questions. One sweltering afternoon, as Joshua stood before his latest fallen creation, a mysterious stonecutter named Benjamin Hayes appeared, his hands weathered by decades of listening to the secrets of rock. "You build like a child stacking clouds," Benjamin observed, kneeling to touch the broken foundation, always reaching higher without first going deep. He led Joshua to a modest temple that had stood for centuries despite earthquakes and storms. "See how it barely rises above the trees? Yet it has outlasted empires. Why?" Before Joshua could answer, Benjamin took him to the temple's underground chambers. "For every foot this temple rises above ground, it extends 2 feet below. The deeper the roots, the higher the reach. He pressed his hand against the ancient stone. Each block you see above is balanced by an invisible counterweight below. This is the law of unshakable things. They grow downward before upward. Dear reader, like Joshua, you may be focused on building the visible heights of your dreams while neglecting the invisible foundations that sustain them. True stability comes not from what you add above, but from what you establish below. Practice the foundation stone. Find a quiet place and stand barefoot on solid ground. Imagine roots extending from your feet deep into the earth. For 7 breaths, focus on drawing strength upward from these roots. Feel how stability arises naturally from depth. With each exhale, let your awareness sink deeper into your foundation, understanding that every great height is achieved through hidden depths. Remember, the master architect knows that unshakable structures are built from the bottom up, not the top down. And so it was that Joshua Martinez became renowned not for the height of his buildings, but for their endurance. Those who studied his work discovered that his greatest innovation wasn't in what could be seen, but in what remained hidden beneath the surface. His writings still survive, teaching that the measure of a structure isn't in how high it soars, but in how deep it roots itself in eternal principles. Before we get into the next chapter, you can download a free ebook version of this audiobook using the link in the pinned comment below this video. Chapter 14, The Healer's Paradox. In the misty valleys of ancient China, where healing herbs grew wild among forgotten temples, lived a devoted healer named Nicole Adams. While other healers mixed elaborate potions and performed complex rituals, Nicole specialized in curing ailments that no medicine seemed to touch, the deep sicknesses of the spirit that manifested as physical pain. Yet despite her gift, there was one patient she could never heal: herself. A mysterious ailment had left her hands trembling for years, making it increasingly difficult to mix her remedies and tend to the sick. One autumn morning, as Nicole gathered herbs in the bamboo forest, she encountered an unusual sight: a wild tiger, lying peaceful as a house cat, while a small boy named Kenneth Hayes played nearby. The boy's grandmother was known as the keeper of ancient healing songs, though she never treated patients or mixed medicines. Grandmother says the tiger was sick with anger until it heard the forest's lullaby, the boy explained, stroking the great cat's fur. She taught me that everything holds its own medicine inside, even the things we think are poisonous. Intrigued, Nicole followed Kenneth to his grandmother's hut, where the old woman sat humming to a collection of seemingly dead plants. As Nicole watched, the plants gradually lifted their leaves, stretching toward the sound. "You seek healing in what you can grasp and measure," the grandmother observed, "but the strongest medicine is formless. It flows through all things, waiting to be awakened by awareness." She took Nicole's trembling hands and placed them on a withered flower. "Don't try to heal it. Simply remember how to bloom with it." In that moment, Nicole felt the flower's life force resonating with her own. Her hands grew still as she recognized that healing wasn't something to be given or taken, but a remembrance of wholeness that already existed. Dear reader, like Nicole, you may be searching outside yourself for healing that can only come from within. True healing emerges not from forcing change, but from awakening the wisdom that flows through all life. Practice the healer's remembering. Find a quiet space and cup your hands as if holding something precious. For 7 breaths, feel the life force flowing through your palms. Don't try to direct or control this energy. Simply allow your awareness to awaken the healing wisdom that already exists within you. Remember, the master healer knows that all healing is really remembering, a return to wholeness that was never truly lost. And so it was that Nicole Adams became known not for the medicine she made, but for teaching others to awaken their inner healing wisdom. Those who came to her learned that the most powerful cures often arrive when we stop searching and start remembering. Her healing songs still echo through the valley, reminding all who hear them that within every challenge lies the seed of its own resolution. Chapter 15, The Navigator's Storm. In the treacherous waters of ancient Phoenicia, where trade routes wove between mythic whirlpools and siren-haunted shores, lived a renowned navigator named Daniel Foster. While other sailors relied on stars and charts, Daniel had mastered the use of mysterious bronze instruments passed down from Egyptian seers. His reputation for finding safe passage through impossible waters made him the most sought-after navigator in the Mediterranean. Yet his dependence on these sacred tools had become so complete that he felt blind without them. One night, as his ship carried precious cargo through the gates of Hercules, a storm of supernatural fury descended. Lightning shattered his instruments, waves washed away his charts, and the stars vanished behind roiling clouds that seemed to laugh at human certainty. As the crew panicked, a small stowaway emerged from below decks, a girl named Laura Hayes, daughter of desert nomads, who watched the chaos with curious calm. "My grandmother says that before there were tools, there were signs," she said, dipping her hand in the water. "The sea itself knows where it's going. It remembers every shore it has ever kissed." She showed Daniel how the subtle currents told stories of distant lands, how the salt spray carried whispers of approaching coasts, how the very motion of the waves revealed the hidden geography beneath. "Your instruments didn't guide you," she explained. "They only helped you trust what you already knew. The true compass spins in your blood. It has been there since your ancestors first dreamed of distant shore." Dear reader, like Daniel, you may have become dependent on external tools and measurements, forgetting the ancient wisdom that flows through your very being. True navigation comes not from what you hold in your hands, but from awakening the knowledge that has always lived in your heart. Practice. The navigator's knowing. Find a quiet space and close your eyes. Feel the subtle movements of air against your skin. For 7 breaths, sense the invisible currents that flow through the world around you. Notice how your body already knows which way to lean, which path feels true. Remember, the master navigator understands that all instruments merely confirm what the inner compass already knows. And so it was that Daniel Foster became legendary not for the tools he used, but for teaching others to trust their innate sense of direction. Those who sailed with him learned that the surest guidance system is the one we're born with, the wisdom that whispers even in the wildest storms. His logbooks still exist, filled not with charts and measurements, but with teachings about the art of trusting the compass that spins in every human heart. Chapter 16, The Painter's Truth. In the mist-shrouded mountains of ancient China, where bamboo forests whispered secrets to passing clouds, lived a gifted but tormented artist named Heather Chen. While other painters celebrated the wild beauty of nature, Heather sought an impossible perfection, destroying countless masterpieces because of tiny flaws only she could see. Her pursuit of flawless beauty had earned her both fame and isolation, as she refused to show any work that didn't meet her exacting standards. Her tiny house filled with discarded canvases, each bearing witness to what she saw as failure. One morning, as Heather prepared to burn another imperfect painting, an old tea merchant named Gregory Hayes stopped to warm himself by her fire. Upon seeing her about to destroy the artwork, he pulled from his robes a cracked tea bowl that seemed to glow with inner light. "See how the golden veins run through the cracks?" he asked, turning the bowl in the firelight. "This is kintsugi, the art of making beauty from brokenness. Each imperfection tells a story that perfection never could." He poured tea into the bowl, and Heather gasped as the liquid traced patterns through the golden repairs, creating a landscape more alive than any she had painted. "You seek to paint the perfect lotus," he observed. "But have you ever seen one? Look closely. Each petal bears tiny tears from the wind. Each leaf shows marks of insects' feasts. It is these flaws that make it real, that tell us it has lived." He lifted her discarded painting, where an unexpected brushstroke had created what she saw as an error. "Here, this is where the painting breathes. Without this mistake, it would be merely a picture of life, not life itself." Dear reader, like Heather, you may be paralyzed by pursuing perfection, missing the beauty that emerges from embracing what you perceive as flaws. True mastery comes not from eliminating imperfection, but from transforming it into something more profound than perfection could ever be. Practice the painter's eye. Find a quiet place and hold something you consider imperfect. For 7 breaths, study it as an artist would, seeing how its flaws create character and depth. With each breath, allow yourself to discover beauty in what you previously judged as wrong or broken. Remember, the master artist knows that perfection is not the absence of flaws, but the transformation of them into something extraordinary. And so it was that Heather Chen became renowned not for flawless technique, but for paintings that captured the raw, authentic beauty of life itself. Those who studied her work discovered that its power lay precisely in the places where perfection had yielded to truth. Her scrolls still survive, teaching that true beauty doesn't hide its scars. It transforms them into gold. Chapter 17, The Librarian's Code. In the labyrinthine halls of ancient Alexandria, where scrolls stretched endlessly toward towering ceilings and wisdom whispered from countless shelves, served a librarian named Ryan Campbell. While other scholars drowned in the ocean of information, Ryan had developed an uncanny ability to locate any text within moments, as if the library itself guided his steps. Yet even his gift was tested when the great library received an unprecedented donation: 10,000 scrolls from a mysterious Eastern temple, each containing fragments of a sacred teaching that only made sense when properly arranged. As Ryan struggled to organize this cosmic puzzle, he noticed a peculiar visitor, a young girl named Christina Phillips, who spent hours arranging fallen leaves in the courtyard into intricate patterns. "The leaves told me their story," she explained, showing him how each leaf naturally found its place. "Everything knows where it belongs. You just have to learn its language." Intrigued, Ryan followed her to a massive oak tree where hundreds of leaves danced in the wind. "See how they never tangle?" she asked. "That's because they follow the same pattern that moves the stars and flows through our thoughts." She demonstrated how the leaves spiraled in a precise mathematical sequence, the same pattern found in seashells, flowering plants, and the very architecture of the cosmos. "Your scrolls are like these leaves," she said. "Each one knows its place in the greater story. Don't organize them. Let them organize themselves through you." With this insight, Ryan began seeing the library differently. The texts weren't separate pieces to be forced into order, but expressions of a single universal pattern that naturally revealed its own structure. Dear reader, like Ryan, you may feel overwhelmed by the chaos of information and choices before you. The secret lies not in imposing order, but in recognizing the inherent pattern that flows through all things. Practice the librarian's patterns. Sit quietly and observe your thoughts for 7 breaths. Don't try to organize them. Instead, notice how they naturally arrange themselves when simply witnessed with awareness. Feel how each thought knows its proper place in the greater pattern of your consciousness. Remember, the master librarian understands that all information carries within it the seed of its own organization. And so it was that Ryan Campbell became legendary, not for memorizing systems, but for teaching others to recognize the living pattern that connects all knowledge. Those who studied with him learned that true wisdom comes not from collecting information, but from seeing how everything is already perfectly arranged in the cosmic library of existence. His method still lives on, showing seekers that within apparent chaos lies a natural order, waiting to be discovered by those who learn to read its ancient code. Chapter 18. The Warrior's Strength. In the mist-covered mountains of ancient Korea, where bamboo forests whispered secrets of forgotten battles, lived a legendary warrior named Megan Torres. While other fighters sought glory through conquest, Megan had earned her reputation by defeating opponents twice her size, though none knew the true source of her power. But pride preceded her fall. In a crucial battle defending her village, she faced a massive warrior who seemed to absorb every strike like mountain stones swallowing rain. For the first time in her life, Megan was utterly defeated. Humiliated, she retreated to a remote temple where she encountered an unusual weapons master, a tiny elderly woman named Ruth Henderson, who tended the temple's ancient blades while humming cheerful tunes. "Interesting, Ruth mused, watching Megan aggressively polish her sword. "You fight the cloth that cleans your blade." When Megan protested, Ruth handed her a feather. "Tell me, how do you defeat this enemy?" "It's not an enemy," Megan replied. "It's just a feather." "Exactly," Ruth smiled. "Now what if I told you nothing is your enemy until you make it so in your mind?" She demonstrated by moving through a series of attacks from imaginary opponents, but instead of blocking or striking back, she simply adjusted her position so that each attack became part of her own movement. "See? No resistance, no enemy. The mountain doesn't fight the wind. It simply shapes the wind's dance. Your greatest opponent isn't the warrior who defeated you, but your belief that you must defeat anything at all." Dear reader, like Megan, you may be exhausting yourself by turning circumstances into enemies that must be overcome. True power comes not from learning to fight better, but from transcending the need to fight at all. Practice the warrior's dance. Stand quietly and imagine challenging circumstances as winds try to move you. For 7 breaths, practice not resisting. Instead, let each challenge flow through you, shaping your dance without breaking your center. With each breath, feel the difference between fighting against and flowing with. Remember, the master warrior understands that true victory comes not from defeating enemies, but from transcending the very concept of opposition. And so it was that Megan Torres became renowned not for her fighting prowess, but for teaching others how to make conflict irrelevant through the art of harmonious movement. Those who trained with her learned that the greatest battle is won when you transform enemies into dancers in your own peaceful choreography. Her teachings survive in secret scrolls, showing that true strength lies not in the power to oppose, but in the wisdom to transform opposition itself into harmony. Chapter 19, The Gardener's Secret. In the hidden valleys of ancient Persia, where desert meets fertile crescent, lived a mysterious gardener named Kevin Anderson. While other cultivators struggled to coax meager crops from the arid soil, Kevin's gardens flourished impossibly. Roses bloomed in winter, fruits ripened in drought, and healing herbs grew in patterns that seemed to dance with sacred geometry. The local rulers demanded to know his secrets, sending their finest agricultural masters to study his methods, but they left confused, for Kevin appeared to break every rule of cultivation they knew. He planted in the wrong seasons, mixed species that should compete, and often sat quietly for hours simply watching his gardens with a subtle smile. One day, a young herb gatherer named Tina Martinez found Kevin gently crying beside a withered seedling. Rather than replanting it, he placed his hands in the soil around it and closed his eyes. "The tears aren't for the plant," he explained, sensing her presence. "They're for the soil. It was telling me of its thirst, but I wasn't listening closely enough." He guided her hands into the earth. "Feel how it speaks?" Every garden is first grown in the space between your heartbeats. The plants aren't reaching for the sun. They're reaching for your belief in their potential. Over the next season, he showed her how each plant carried a divine blueprint that could only unfold when met with complete trust. "Your doubt is like shade," he taught, "while your faith is the ultimate fertilizer." Dear reader, like the plants in Kevin's garden, your dreams carry within them perfect instructions for their own fulfillment. But they require the fertile soil of unwavering belief and the patient nurturing of one who listens to life's whispered wisdom. Practice the gardener's touch. Find a quiet space and cup your hands as if holding precious seeds. For 7 breaths, feel the warmth building between your palms. With each breath, plant one dream in this energetic soil, nurturing it with absolute faith in its perfect unfolding. Remember, doubt not the seed, doubt not the season, doubt not the sacred timing of its bloom. Remember, the master gardener knows that every dream is a seed from the divine, carrying within it the full power of the universe's endless creativity. And so it was that Kevin Anderson became legendary, not for his botanical mastery, but for teaching others to cultivate the invisible gardens of possibility. Those who studied with him learned that the greatest growth happens first in the soil of consciousness, where faith becomes the water that brings forth life's most magnificent blooms. His gardens still flourish, teaching that when we nurture our dreams with the same patience and trust we give to growing things, miracles become as natural as flowers, opening to the dawn. Chapter 20, The Messenger's Speed. In the winding streets of ancient Baghdad, where time itself seemed to dance between shadows and light, lived a royal messenger named Brittany Hall. While other couriers raced along well-worn paths between cities, Brittany possessed an uncanny ability to deliver messages in half the expected time, appearing as if by magic just when hope seems lost. Yet even her legendary swiftness met its match when the Sultan's daughter fell ill, and the only cure lay with a mystic healer 7 days' journey across treacherous desert. The message had to arrive in 3 days, or all would be lost. As Brittany prepared for this impossible task, she encountered a peculiar figure, a bent old woman named Helen Ward, who walked with excruciating slowness, yet somehow appeared at multiple places in the marketplace simultaneously. Rushing down the visible path, Helen mused, watching Brittany gather supplies is like trying to cross a river by chasing its surface ripples. She beckoned Brittany to follow, though she moved so slowly it seemed madness to waste precious time. Yet with each step, the marketplace somehow shifted, distances collapsed, and they covered impossible ground. Speed isn't about moving faster, Helen explained. It's about seeing the folds in reality where 2 distant points already touch. The shortest path isn't a line, it's a moment of recognition. She demonstrated by folding a piece of silk, bringing 2 separated corners instantly together. Reality is like this silk. Those who rush see only the surface, but those who understand its nature can step through its hidden doorways. Dear reader, like Brittany, you may be exhausting yourself, racing along obvious paths. True swiftness comes not from faster movement, but from perceiving the secret bridges where your starting point already touches your destination. Practice the messenger's gait, sit quietly, and visualize your journey's end. For 7 breaths, feel how it already exists here now. Don't reach for it. Let it reveal its presence in this moment. With each breath, sense the invisible threads connecting all points in space and time. Remember, the master messenger understands that the swiftest path often appears motionless to those who see only with outer eyes. And so it was that Brittany Hall became renowned not for her speed, but for teaching others how to find the hidden gates between here and there. Those who learned from her discovered that any destination is but a single step away when you perceive the sacred geometry that connects all points in creation. Her method lives on in secret teachings, showing seekers that the fastest journey isn't taken by foot, but through the ancient doorways that exist in the still point of a prepared heart. Part 3, The Power of Transcendence. Chapter 21, The Oracle's Paradox. In the misty peaks of ancient Delphi, where reality shimmered like morning dew on spider silk, lived an unusual oracle named Jeremy Phillips. Unlike other seers who spoke in cryptic riddles, Jeremy was known for prophecies that manifested with uncanny precision, though not in the way most expected. Those seeking their destiny would climb the 1,000 steps to his mountain temple, where Jeremy sat beside a pool of midnight black water that never reflected the sky. But rather than peer into the pool's depths as other oracles did, he would ask visitors to cast a single drop of their own tears into the water. One day, a troubled merchant sought Jeremy's guidance about an imminent business venture. The oracle watched the merchant's tear strike the pool's surface, but instead of pronouncing a prophecy, he asked, "Tell me, what ripples do you see?" "3 expanding circles," the merchant replied. "And I see 7, Jeremy smiled. "Thus we've just witnessed 2 different futures born from the same moment. Which is true?" He guided the merchant's gaze back to the pool. "The future isn't a fixed path waiting to be discovered. It's an infinite garden waiting to be planted. Every prophecy I speak becomes true, not because I see what must be, but because I help others see what could be until it becomes what is." Dear reader, like the merchant, you may seek to know what lies ahead, but the oracle's true secret is that the future is shaped not by what we see, but by how we see. Every moment contains infinite potential futures. Your power lies in which ones you water with your attention. Practice the Oracle's Pool. Find a quiet space with a small bowl of water. For 7 breaths, gaze at its surface while holding a question about your path. Don't try to see the future. Instead, feel how each breath ripples through the infinite possibilities that exist in this moment. Notice how your attention draws certain futures closer while letting others fade. Remember, the Master Oracle understands that prophecy isn't about predicting what must be, but about recognizing what's ready to become. And so it was that Jeremy Phillips became legendary, not for seeing the future, but for teaching others how to shape it through the power of their perception. Those who understood his deeper message learned that destiny isn't written in the stars, but in the choices we make about which possibilities to nurture. His wisdom lives on in sacred pools that still dot the mountainside, teaching seekers that the greatest prophecy is the one we dare to speak into existence through our own transformed vision. Chapter 22. The Inventor's Breakthrough. In the bustling workshops of ancient Alexandria, where steam and celestial mathematics merged in wondrous ways, lived an inventor named Amber Lewis. While others created increasingly complex machines, Amber was known for devices of breathtaking elegance that seemed to work by impossible simplicity. Yet she hadn't always been known for such grace. In her early years, her workshop overflowed with half-finished contraptions of maddening complexity, wheels within wheels, springs upon springs, each attempt to solve a problem adding new layers of complication. Her transformation began when a desert wanderer named Peter Hayes sought shelter in her workshop during a sandstorm. As she fretted over a water-lifting device with hundreds of intricate parts, he quietly began disassembling it. "What are you doing?" she demanded, watching in horror as he removed piece after piece. "Finding the water's truth," he replied, continuing until only 3 elements remained. To her astonishment, the device worked better than before. "The universe," he explained, "abhors unnecessary effort. Every problem contains its own perfect solution, but we bury it under layers of complexity born from our doubt." Over the next season, he taught her to see the essential nature of things. "When you understand water's deepest desire," he said, "it will show you how it wishes to flow. All mastery comes from removing what stands between you and the simple truth." Dear reader, like Amber's early inventions, you may be complicating what yearns to be simple. True power doesn't come from adding more, but from discovering the elegant core that remains when all excess falls away. Practice. The Inventor's Eye. Sit quietly with a challenge you face for 7 breaths. Begin removing every element that isn't absolutely essential to its solution. With each breath, strip away 1 layer of complexity until only the pure essence remains. Notice how clarity emerges, not from building up, but from distilling down. Remember, the master inventor understands that perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. And so it was that Amber Lewis became legendary not for creating complexity, but for revealing the profound simplicity hidden within all things. Those who studied with her learned that the greatest breakthroughs come not from forcing new pathways, but from clearing the obstacles that hide the natural way. Her workshop still stands in Alexandria's ancient heart, teaching that when we trust in the elegant simplicity of universal principles, solutions reveal themselves with the same effortless grace as water finding its level. Chapter 23, The Judge's Wisdom. In the marble halls of ancient Persepolis, where justice and mercy danced an eternal dance, lived a renowned judge named Stephen Rodriguez. While other magistrates relied on scrolls of written law, Stephen was known for rendering verdicts that seemed to emerge from a deeper well of wisdom. Yet even his legendary judgment faced its greatest test when two brothers brought a dispute over their father's final breath. Each claimed their father had whispered a different last wish, and no witnesses remained to verify either tale. As Stephen pondered this impossible case, he encountered a mysterious temple sweeper named Ruth Henderson, who cleaned the courthouse floors each dawn with precise, mindful strokes. "Notice," she said, watching his troubled expression, "how the marble knows exactly where dust belongs and where it doesn't. It passes judgment without a single written law." She guided him to a fountain in the courtyard where water flowed over step pools. "See how water instantly knows its level? It needs no external authority to find perfect balance." But these are simple matters," Stephen protested. "Human affairs are far more complex." Ruth smiled, dipping her hand in the fountain. "The complexity is only in our minds. Within you flows the same wisdom that guides every drop of water to its rightful place. Your task isn't to judge, but to clear away the mental dust that clouds this inner knowing." Dear reader, like Stephen, you may seek answers in external authorities, but the highest court already exists within you, where truth and harmony flow as naturally as water, finding its level. Practice the inner court. Sit quietly with the decision you face. For 7 breaths, release all external voices of should and must. Feel the natural wisdom that remains when mental noise subsides. Notice how clarity emerges not from thinking harder, but from allowing your inner truth to surface. Remember, the Master Judge understands that perfect justice isn't calculated. It's recognized when the heart is clear enough to reflect universal law. And so it was that Stephen Rodriguez became legendary not for his verdicts, but for teaching others to access their internal compass of truth. Those who learned from him discovered that wisdom isn't found in scrolls or statutes, but in the silent courthouse of the heart where justice flows as naturally as a stream, finding the sea. His courtroom still stands in Persepolis, reminding seekers that when we clear away our mental contradictions, truth reveals itself with the same certainty as light dispersing shadows. In Chapter 24, The Explorer's Discovery. In the twisting canyons of ancient Petra, where sandstone walls held secrets older than memory, lived an explorer named Samantha Turner. While others sought legendary treasures in distant lands, Samantha became known for finding priceless artifacts in places others had searched 1,000 times before. Yet she hadn't always possessed this gift. For years, she led expeditions to the furthest corners of the known world, always believing the next horizon would reveal what she sought. Each journey left her empty-handed, though her map showed she'd covered every possible route. Her transformation began when a flash flood trapped her in a familiar cave she'd explored countless times. As she waited out the storm, an elderly mapmaker named Gregory Walsh took shelter in the same cave. Watching her restless pacing, he asked, "Why do you walk the same path with different eyes?" "I've searched this cave completely," she replied. "There's nothing here." He smiled, lighting a small oil lamp. "Watch," he said, holding it at an odd angle. The flame's light caught the wall in a new way. revealing ancient symbols that had been invisible when viewed straight on. The treasure you seek isn't hidden by distance, he explained, but by perspective. Every place contains infinite discoveries. They're simply waiting for the right way of seeing. Over 7 days, he taught her to explore familiar spaces as if experiencing them for the first time. The greatest mysteries, he said, aren't found by traveling farther, but by looking deeper. Dear reader, like Samantha's early journeys, you may believe breakthrough lies in some distant place. But the most profound discoveries await in territories you've already traveled, visible only through transformed vision. Practice the explorer's eye. Choose a familiar space, a room, a path, or even your own thoughts. For 7 breaths, release all assumptions about what you'll find. Explore this known territory as if encountering it for the first time. Notice how new discoveries emerge, not from searching harder, but from seeing differently. Remember, the master explorer understands that every space contains infinite treasures. They're revealed not by distance traveled, but by depth of vision. And so it was that Samantha Turner became legendary, not for finding new lands, but for revealing the overlooked wonders in well-traveled places. Those who learned from her discovered that the greatest treasures often lie hidden in plain sight, waiting for eyes ready to see them anew. Her maps still mark the caves of Petra, teaching seekers that when we transform our way of looking, every familiar path becomes an unexplored territory rich with discoveries waiting to be found. Chapter 25, The Alchemist's Gold. In the shadow-lit laboratories of ancient Damascus, where quicksilver dreams danced in copper bowls, lived an alchemist named Aaron Mitchell. While others sought to transmute lead into gold through endless formulas, Aaron discovered a deeper secret, that true alchemy begins not with metals, but with the mind that shapes them. Yet his early years were marked by failure. His crucibles cracked, his mixtures turned to ash, and gold remained eternally elusive. His breakthrough came not in triumph, but in what seemed his greatest disaster. One evening, his most promising experiment exploded, coating his workshop in a fine silver dust that refused to be cleaned. In despair, he was about to abandon his life's work when a wandering glassmaker named Helen Brooks appeared at his door. "Fascinating," she said, studying the dust-covered walls. "You've created the perfect reflective surface. Do you know how many artificers would pay fortunes for this?" Aaron stared in wonder as she explained how his failure had accidentally created something more valuable than the gold he sought. That night, she taught him the ancient art of limitation alchemy. "Every obstacle contains its own transcendence," she explained, drawing symbols in the silver dust. "The master alchemist doesn't fight against what is, but learns to see how each limitation already holds the seeds of its own transformation." Over the next moon cycle, she showed him how every failed experiment had produced something remarkable. He simply hadn't had eyes to see it. "The true philosopher's stone," she said, "isn't a substance, but a way of perceiving that transmutes everything it touches." Dear reader, like Aaron's early struggles, you may see your limitations as barriers to be overcome, but within each apparent obstacle lies a hidden advantage, waiting to be recognized and transformed. Practice the alchemist's eye. Sit quietly with what you consider your greatest limitation. For 7 breaths, cease trying to change or fight it. Instead, explore it with curious attention, as if studying an unexpected reaction in your crucible. Notice how your perception begins to shift, revealing hidden possibilities within the very thing you wish to transform. Remember, the master alchemist understands that nothing needs to be eliminated. Everything can be transmuted when seen through eyes that recognize the gold hidden within lead. And so it was that Aaron Mitchell became legendary not for creating ordinary gold, but for teaching the art of transforming limitations into advantages. Those who studied with him learned that true alchemy happens not in external crucibles, but in the mysterious laboratory of perception, where everything contains its own transcendence. His workshop still stands in Damascus's ancient quarter, reminding seekers that when we master the alchemy of perception, every obstacle reveals itself as an opportunity in disguise. Chapter 26, The Sage's Laughter. In the misty mountains of ancient Tibet, where wisdom echoed through temple halls, lived a philosopher named Tiffany Anderson. While other sages delivered their teachings with stern gravity, Tiffany was known for the peculiar way truth seemed to bubble up through her unexpected laughter. Yet she hadn't always embraced joy's role in enlightenment. For years she pursued wisdom through serious study, believing profound truth required a furrowed brow and solemn contemplation. Her scrolls grew heavy with complex theories, yet understanding remained elusive. Her transformation began during a month-long meditation retreat, where she encountered an unusual temple cook named Patrick Henderson. While other monks ate in silence, Patrick's kitchen rang with cheerful humming and the occasional chuckle. One morning, as Tiffany pondered a particularly difficult koan, she heard Patrick's delighted laughter echo through the courtyard. He stood watching a monkey trying to catch its reflection in a pond. See how the monkey grows frustrated, seeking what's already there. Patrick grinned. Reminds me of certain philosophers I know. The simple observation struck her like lightning. Years of philosophical knots untangled in a moment of shared laughter. The deepest truths, Patrick explained, wear the disguise of simplicity. They're so obvious we can only laugh when we finally see them. Over the next moon cycle, he showed her how cosmic humor revealed what logic could never grasp. Life's greatest mysteries, he said, aren't solved through thinking. They're recognized through the surprise delight of discovering what was always in plain sight. Dear reader, like Tiffany's early pursuit, you may believe wisdom requires grave seriousness, but the most profound realizations often arrive wrapped in laughter's light touch, revealing truth too simple for the serious mind to see. Practice the laughing sage. Sit quietly with a challenge you face. For 7 breaths, release all intellectual analysis. Instead, imagine sharing your situation with a laughing Buddha. Notice how cosmic humor begins to reveal the simple truth hidden beneath your complicated thoughts. Remember, the master sage understands that wisdom often comes disguised as life's cosmic joke, the surprise of discovering that what we desperately seek has been smiling at us all along. And so it was that Tiffany Anderson became legendary, not for her philosophical treatises, but for teaching truth through joyful revelation. Those who learned from her discovered that the deepest wisdom often arrives not through the front door of serious study, but through the side window of unexpected laughter. Her meditation hall still stands in those misty mountains, reminding seekers that when we lighten our approach to life's mysteries, truth reveals itself with the delightful surprise of cosmic humor. Chapter 27, The Master's Student. In the sacred valleys of ancient Kashmir, where knowledge flowed like honey from generation to generation, lived a renowned teacher named Rachel Foster. While other masters sought to prove their wisdom through complex teachings, Rachel was known for distilling profound truth into its purest essence, and yet she hadn't always possessed this gift. For decades, she filled countless scrolls with elaborate philosophical discourse, believing wisdom's depth required intricate explanation. Her lectures drew scholars from distant lands, yet true understanding remained elusive among her students. Her transformation began during the monsoon season, when a young village girl named Melissa Hayes started attending her classes. While learned scholars debated theoretical minutiae, Melissa would ask questions that cut straight to the heart of every teaching. One afternoon, as Rachel explained an ancient parable about a cup being too full to receive more tea, Melissa interrupted with innocent curiosity, "But teacher, why not just get a bigger cup?" The simplicity of her question sparked ripples of revelation through Rachel's consciousness. Years of philosophical complexity dissolved in the face of childlike directness. "Sometimes," Melissa explained, "we make things harder by thinking they must be hard." Over the next moon cycle, Rachel watched how Melissa approached each teaching with fresh eyes, unburdened by preconceptions. The beginner's mind, she realized, sees solutions that expertise has learned to overlook. Dear reader, like Rachel's early approach, you may believe mastery requires increasing complexity, but the deepest wisdom often reveals itself through returning to simplicity, seeing with eyes unclouded by knowledge. Practice. The beginner's view. Choose a challenge you face. For 7 breaths, release all expert knowledge and learn solutions. Approach it as a child might, with pure curiosity and no preconceptions. Notice how fresh possibilities emerge when you allow yourself to not know the answer. Remember, the master teacher understands that true wisdom often comes not from accumulating knowledge, but from recovering the ability to see with beginner's eyes. And so it was that Rachel Foster became legendary, not for her scholarly teachings, but for showing how wisdom flows most freely through minds open enough to learn from anyone, even the youngest student. Those who studied with her discovered that the greatest breakthroughs often come not from complexity, but from returning to simple truth. Her school still stands in Kashmir's Sacred Valley, reminding seekers that when we release the burden of expertise, every moment becomes an opportunity to discover wisdom anew through beginner's eyes. Chapter 28, The Phoenix's Flight. In the crystal caverns beneath Mount Helios, where sacred fires burned in pools of liquid light, lived a mysterious keeper of the eternal flame named Brian Chen. While others sought to preserve their flames through constant tending, Brian had discovered the secret of letting a fire die to burn even brighter. Yet his early years were marked by desperate preservation. He would exhaust himself keeping every member alive, believing that maintaining what was meant prevented loss. His breakthrough came when he witnessed something extraordinary in the deepest chamber. One dawn he found his most cherished flame flickering near death. Despite his frantic efforts, it dimmed to nothing but ash. In his moment of deepest despair, he watched in wonder as the gray powder began to stir, swirling with inner light until it erupted into a flame more radiant than before. That evening, an ancient fire dancer named Rebecca Turner appeared at his chamber. "You've discovered it," she smiled, watching the transformed flame. "The Phoenix Point, where surrender becomes power." She taught him the sacred art of cyclical release. "Most seek to hold on forever," she explained, drawing circles in the ash. "But true mastery comes from understanding when and how to let go completely." knowing that release itself contains the seed of renewal. Over the next moon cycle, she showed him how every death contained its own resurrection, how every ending held the beginning of something greater. The real mystery of the phoenix, she said, isn't about rising from ashes. It's about trusting the process enough to become ashes first. Dear reader, like Brian's early struggles, you may believe preservation requires constant effort, but within the art of conscious release lies a power greater than any attempt to hold on. Practice the phoenix release. Sit quietly with something you're desperately trying to preserve. For 7 breaths, cease all effort to maintain it. Instead, allow yourself to fully experience the sensation of letting go, as if watching a flame return to ash. Notice how release itself begins to reveal new life stirring within the surrender. Remember, the master of renewal understands that nothing truly dies. It only transforms when we trust enough to release it completely into the flames of transformation. And so it was that Brian Chen became legendary, not for keeping flames alive, but for teaching the art of rebirth through release. Those who studied with him learned that true preservation happens not through desperate clinging, but through mastering the wisdom of cyclical surrender. His crystal chamber still glows beneath Mount Helios, reminding seekers that when we master the phoenix point of letting go, every ending reveals itself as a beginning in disguise. Chapter 29, The Mirror's Reflection. In the crystalline caves of ancient Delphi, where reality shimmered like morning dew, lived a keeper of sacred mirrors named Jennifer Walsh. While others polished their mirrors to reflect the physical world, Jennifer's mirrors revealed the hidden truths beneath appearance. Her journey began in frustration, endlessly cleaning surfaces that never seemed pure enough. Each dawn she would find her perfectly polished mirrors clouded again, as if reality itself refused to be captured in mere reflection. Everything changed when an enigmatic wanderer named Gregory Barnes appeared at her cave. While Jennifer fretted over a particularly stubborn smudge, Gregory stood before her largest mirror, laughing. "What do you see?" he asked, gesturing to their reflections. "A dirty mirror that won't come clean," she sighed. "Interesting," he mused. "I see the cave's entire opening behind us, the morning sky, and infinite possibility. Same mirror, different perception." That moment sparked her awakening. Over the next moon cycle, Gregory showed her that mirrors don't simply reflect reality. They reveal how we choose to see it. The surface is perfect already, he taught. What changes is the eye of the beholder. He guided her through the cave of 1,000 mirrors, where each reflection showed a different facet of truth. "Notice how the same scene transforms as you move from mirror to mirror," he said. "Reality hasn't changed. Only your perspective has shifted." Dear reader, like Jennifer's early struggles, you may believe truth needs constant polishing to be seen clearly, but the deepest seeing comes not from changing what is, but from transforming how you perceive it. Practice the mirror of perception. Stand before any reflecting surface. For 7 breaths, release all attempts to change what you see. Instead, shift your attention to different aspects of the reflection: background, foreground, spaces between objects. Notice how reality transforms, not through alteration, but through attention. Remember, the master of perception understands that what we see is less about the mirror's surface and more about where we choose to focus our gaze. And so it was that Jennifer Walsh became legendary, not for keeping the clearest mirrors, but for teaching others to see truly through them. Those who sought her wisdom discovered that reality's greatest shifts happen not by changing what is, but by transforming how we perceive what has always been there. Her cave still stands in ancient Delphi, its mirrors reminding seekers that when we master the art of perception, every reflection reveals not just what is, but what could be. Chapter 30, The Key's Purpose. In the labyrinthine depths of ancient Alexandria, where mysteries whispered through torchlit corridors, lived a legendary keeper of keys named Mark Edwards. Unlike other key masters who collected physical keys, Mark guarded something far more precious, the knowledge of how doors cease to be barriers. His early years were spent gathering every key he could find, believing that mastery meant having the right key for every lock. His collection grew famous, drawing seekers from distant lands who believed he could open any door. But transformation came through an unexpected encounter with a blind locksmith named Dennis Hayes. While Mark proudly displayed his vast key collection, Dennis ran his fingers over an ornate golden key and laughed softly. "What do you see?" Dennis asked, holding the key. "The most perfect key ever crafted," Mark replied. "Interesting," Dennis mused. "I feel only empty space taking the shape of our beliefs about barriers." That moment shattered Mark's understanding. Over the next moon cycle, Dennis taught him that locks exist primarily in the mind. The physical barrier is merely a reflection of our acceptance that we cannot pass, he explained, moving effortlessly through spaces Mark had always seen as blocked. "Watch closely," Dennis would say, dissolving seemingly impenetrable barriers with a touch. "I'm not opening anything. I'm simply failing to recognize the illusion of separation." Dear reader, like Mark's early conviction, you may believe mastery requires finding the right key for every lock. But the deepest freedom comes not from collecting solutions, but from seeing that barriers themselves are often only shadows cast by our beliefs. Practice the keyless opening. Choose something you perceive as blocked or locked in your life. For 7 breaths, release all attempts to find the right key or solution. Instead, experience the barrier itself as transparent, letting your awareness pass through it as if it were merely mist. Notice how resistance dissolves not through forcing, but through failing to believe in its solidity. Remember, the master of passage understands that the ultimate key is not an object that opens doors, but the recognition that doors themselves exist mainly in our perception. And so it was that Mark Edwards became legendary, not for his collection of keys, but for teaching others that freedom comes from seeing through the illusion of imprisonment. Those who sought his wisdom discovered that the greatest locks dissolve not through finding the right key, but through transcending the very concept of barriers. His chamber still exists in Alexandria's ancient depths, keyless and open, reminding seekers that when we release our belief in barriers, we find we were never truly locked away from anything at all. If you enjoyed this audiobook, I created a free ebook version for you. You can download it using the link in the pinned comment. Conclusion. In the way of the old ones, keepers of silence and flame, there are no true endings, only sacred returns. What seems like a closing is but a turning back to what has always waited in the stillness beneath your name. Through these parables you have walked not just across lands of sand and stone, forest and fire, but through the hidden chambers of your own being. You have met glassblowers who shaped the unseen with breath alone, merchants who surrendered and found themselves crowned, healers who did not fix but remembered, warriors who dissolved their battles into light, and keymasters who reminded you that every gate is forged in thought. Yet the real pilgrimage was never outward. The temples and mountains were only mirrors. What you sought in the story, you carried in your soul. Remember the breath of the glass blower, how true transformation yields to rhythm, not resistance. Recall the patience of the farmer, how all things bloom first in darkness, watered by unseen hands. Reflect on the mirror's gift, that reality bends not when we force it, but when we soften how we see. These are not lessons to learn, but awakenings to live. The path was never about gathering more. It was always about the shedding, the gentle unraveling of what never belonged to you. You were never meant to become something else. You were only meant to return to the quiet flame of what you've always been. As these final words dissolve, know this: the story is not ending. The true story begins now. In the rustle of trees, in the spaces between thoughts, in the synchrony of footsteps and stars. These are your teachers now, the oracles of ordinary wonder. So go, not as one who has finished a book, but as one who has remembered. Walk lightly, not in search, but in sacred recognition. What you once chased now moves with you. What you seek was never lost. For in the end, as it was in the beginning, the secret was never far. It was simply waiting, in silence, in stillness, in you. If you enjoyed this exclusive audiobook, I handpicked this next book which will change your life.